Hi, my name is Jeff. My family originally came from Holland, and we grew up with this traditional Dutch treat, which is called Oliebollen, which translates into oil balls. This was something that was popular in Holland. They would have it in carnivals and stuff without the raisins and apples in it, and it'd be like a donut. And really, this is kind of where our donut originated from, they say. But we're going to add raisins and apples, which is the traditional way to do it in Holland. And I'm going to try to share this recipe. I had to play around back and forth. There's so many recipes online. I lost the original Dutch recipe that we had. So we've been playing around with it, and I think I got it down pat, because a lot of the times it's not translated into the English, and it's into the liters and metric systems, and it gets a little confusing. But anyway, I'm going to try to make it as easy as I can. So I have my beautiful wife videoing, Gemma, and we're going to see if we can show you how to make traditional oliebollen. So we're going to start with these ingredients. Now the batch that we're making is a double batch. So if you want to make half of this amount, you just cut everything in half that we're doing and that we're saying. I'm doing this because we're actually going to be taking it to some church events and some people, so we're making quite a few of them. So we're doing a double batch. A single batch might make a dozen or so, so we're going to be hopefully making a double batch of that. I already had mixed it all together, and we have some rising right now, so we're going to kind of show you as we go through with this, and then we'll go directly into cooking them. So what we do start with is the sifted flour. So we took the flour and we sifted it. This helps it mix in with the rest of the ingredients. So right now, like I say, it's a double batch, so we have traditional regular batch is 2 1/4 cups. The double batch is 4 1/2 cups of sifted flour. Next, we have 2 cups of milk, double of the original, which would be 1. And we're going to make that milk lukewarm. It has to be lukewarm in order to mix with the yeast and for the active yeast to work. We're going to put 2 cups of raisins and 2 granny cooking apples. So this oliebollen will have like a sweet and kind of a soury taste, which makes it unique. And that's the reason why. We're going to have sugar. I have it measured out in 2 different increments. We got 2 tablespoons of sugar that we're going to mix with the whole batch. And we have 2 teaspoons that I'm going to mix in with the yeast milk to help make the yeast more active. And then we have 2 teaspoons, or actually 4 teaspoons of salt. And we have double batch, we have 4 1/2 teaspoons of dry active yeast. It was always hard. This is the most difficult thing, is getting the yeast to make the dough rise. You have to kind of play around with it. This time when we're trying it out of the jar, and hopefully it works. The last batch I was mixing both because I was worried that it wouldn't rise. But I know it's rising right now. We'll see if this, in the future, how it rises. But you can use different kind of yeast. You can put 1 ounce of cake yeast if you want to use it. Or you can figure 2 1/4 twice for the dry active yeast. So, and we're going to use 3 tablespoons of butter. So what we get to doing is we're going to take one thing I forgot to mention, we need 1 egg per batch. This is a double batch, so we're using 2 eggs. Okay, first of all, I'm going to start with the milk. We need it actually lukewarm for the yeast to work, so we can put it in the microwave for a little while. We don't want it boiling hot or anything, but we want it lukewarm. So we're going to set it here in the microwave. Okay, now we just warmed up the milk. We made it lukewarm. So 45 seconds or so in the microwave, you can kind of tell, just lukewarm. Depending on your microwave, it could be different. And I heated up the butter so that way I can mix it in with the milk. And we're going to mix it in with the yeast. So this is the 2 cups of milk. This is the 4 1/2 teaspoons of yeast. We're going to put that all in there. Now we're going to be adding the 2 teaspoons of sugar. That's why we separated it. So the 2 teaspoons will go in with the yeast. and we're going to add the butter in between it. Now we're just going to let that mix up together. They say if you want to know if the yeast is actually working, if it bubbles, I'm just going to mix it up good and just let it stand. You know, maybe 20 minutes or so. We'll see how it goes. Just every once in a while, maybe stir it or so. So we're just going to leave it alone for a little while. Now what we did with the apples and raisins, we chopped up the apples in small pieces. We mixed them all up good. And then we put them in some water. You can put maybe a little warm water and soak them for a little while. You know, 15 minutes or so, or 20 minutes. And then what you do is you take them out and pat dry them. Just have them all mixed up good. And then we're going to take, we have the sifted flour in here. And we're going to, so just checking on the yeast. So now we're going to take the salt and we're going to mix it in with the flour. And we're going to mix the sugar in with the flour. And we're going to mix that up good. We're going to make a little well in the flour. This is where we're going to add the eggs. I am a little concerned if I added too much salt. We'll see how this batch comes out in the future. Now we're going to wait a little while for this yeast to dissolve. So we'll wait another 10 minutes or so and see how it does. Welcome back. Now that the yeast has activated the milk and the butter and the sugar that we had put in there, we're going to mix it in with the sifted flour and the 2 eggs. So we're going to combine that in there. And then we're going to combine the apples and the raisins. And then we're going to get down to mixing it. I'm just using a knife right now. One of those little whipping deals didn't work for me because it just gets all stuck in there. So my wife actually suggested, and I did it last time and got in here with my hands. Remind me when I was first job making pizzas when I was 14. So we're just going to mix it all up really good. And I guess it's time for me to get my hands all dirty. Big mushy mess. This one came out a little more wet than the last one. I don't know if it's always a good idea, the raisins and the apples, if you pat dry them before you put them in here, and I don't think we did, so it brings a little more moisture in here. But it'll still be good. So we got everything mixed up in here pretty good. I don't see any dry flour around anymore. That comes the fun part of getting it off my hands. What we're going to do is we're going to let this bowl sit for about an hour to rise. Now prior to this, so we don't keep you waiting, anticipation, we made a batch before this. And it has risen, just like Jesus Christ has risen. So we are coming to Christmas Christmas Eve is actually tomorrow. So I'm going to wash my hands. Now this is we had just mixed it, so we're actually just going to cover it with a towel. You want to keep it somewhere in a nice little warm place to let it rise. And usually take about an hour or so. So this is actually the batch we made prior. You can see how much it's risen from what this bowl would have been. So it rises usually about, if the yeast works, at least double. So anyway, now we're going to cook them. Now we have it in a pan of grease. And you want to make sure that the Oliebollen, when you put them in there, they're going to sink to the bottom, that they submerge and they come up. You have enough grease in there. It all depends what kind of pan you have and everything for the size. You're going to take 2 spoons, ladles. That way you can kind of spoon them off to dip them in there. The grease, they say between 170, 190 approximately. You don't want to burn them, but they should cook for around 3 minutes or so till they're golden brown. And then we're going to sit them on here so they can strain and just kind of just drain from the grease that's on them. So we're just going to spoon them like this. We'll see if the grease is ready. And it's ready. You can see how they're cooking. Sometimes you can overpower them, you know, or cook too many at a time, but right now I can tell the grease is a good temperature. You put them in there. You're going to fry them until they're golden brown. And I'll show you what they should look like. When these are finished, we cover them with typically with powdered sugar. And that just adds for the nice flavor that you have. And you have a couple different flavors in here, like a little bit celery, the sweet from the raisins. And I can tell the grease is a little high here. I'm going to turn it down because it's cooking really fast. So I can turn it down a little bit. The spoons work pretty good for just spooning it off. The ones you used to see in the carnivals in Holland, they would be perfectly round. With the raisins and everything, it would give really nice, just oddball figures. Configurations, I guess you call it. And when they come out to that golden brown is where you want to be. So I'm kind of flipping the other side over. You can see how it's come out really nice. That's a good look right now, what you see. So the grease is doing a pretty good job right now. Sometimes you get too many in there and then they don't cook as fast and it'll come out too greasy on the inside or the outside. The Oliebollen, you know, sure it's nice to eat them when they're hot, but I always used to like them even days afterwards when the powdered sugar kind of melts on them and stuff. They get, I gotta warn you, they get addicting. You eat one and it's just that those different flavors that you taste, the sweet and the sour kind of gives you where you're kind of wanting it again. So if you're worried about your weight, be careful because these are addicting. And you can see how pretty they're coming out. They're coming out really nice and brown. And that's what we want all the way around. I'm going to do this one a little bit more and I'll show you, see if it comes out right. Yeah, this one's finished, so you kind of strain it a little bit. Watch your grease. You can see the raisins and the apples that kind of pop out as they cook. I grew up with these. My mother she passed away a long time ago, but she used to make these for us all the time. So kind of traditionally, as I grew up, even in my teens and stuff, I'd make these, and when I was working for different companies, you know, I installed carpets, so I'd bring these as a traditional treat to all the stores for being grateful for carrying me for the work that I did for them. Kind of like a bonus for them. You know, I'd bring a big plate of these, and they always appreciated it. I haven't done this, for probably 20, 30 years, so I had to look around for some recipes and stuff, and then kind of ad lib to see how they come out. We're ready to add some more. Depending on the size, determines how many you make. This was a double batch, but I'm not getting as many as I thought I would out of it. We'll see. Depends how big you make them. And when they're fresh and stuff, they're a little bit crunchy. After a couple days, they get a little harder, but they still have a good flavor to them. You probably could have let the dough even rise more. So I'm going to finish cooking these, and I'm going to show you what we do with them instead of cooking everything at once right now. I'll finish these up and then show you how we dress them up. They make a nice treat, if you got guests coming over, or you want to impress somebody with something different that they normally wouldn't ever come across. Like I said, they're called Oliebollen. And that's the Dutch term, which means oil balls. So you can see why they're called oil balls. It's a fried food. You can tell with everything in it. You can tell it's not the most healthiest. But like donuts and everything else on either. So it's just nice once in a while. Treat yourself. Something different and good. Especially if you wait for once a year during the holidays. We're getting ready for Christmas. We're Christians, and we look forward to the Christmas candlelight service that we're going to have tomorrow at our church. And we might bless some of them and bring some of these as a treat if we can make enough, because I want to people at the church. If you have never been to a candlelight service, it's awesome. I'll try to explain to you why they do it. Is when Jesus came here, brought the light to the world. We're supposed to spread the gospel. And the candlelight service is where they give everybody a candle. And one is lit, and then the rest are lit one by one. And we see how spreading the gospel lights up the world. Just thought I'd mention that. We're getting down to ready. So while these are cooking, I'm going to show you what we do with them. So this is how we traditionally serve them. You just place them with some powdered sugar like that. They do look very appetizing. I'm going to just take a little piece off of this one. I don't want to spoil my appetite right now. Do my taste test. Very good. That's Oliebollen. Okay, as you can see, this is the finished product. These were the 2 batches, so you can see how many we got. It was a little over 2 dozen. And I hope you enjoy, and I hope you learned something from this video. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.